All right, brothers and sisters, welcome to part 3 of the Mesmer leveling guide. This section of the guide is going to focus on getting you from 60 to 80. This is a Phantasm build. We're going to be focusing on power damage using the Greatsword, Sword, and Pistol. And if you're not level 60 yet, make sure to check out the appropriate guide for your level. Links will be in the description below. Let's get to it. As a fresh level 60, you'll want to respec to the build on the screen right now. 10 in Domination, 10 in Dueling, 25 in Inspiration, and 5 in Illusions. Mesmers are kind of late bloomers in my opinion, and this is where I feel like the build really starts coming together. So the 10 points in Domination gets us Empowered Illusions, which is a flat 15% damage increase on our Phantasms. Putting 10 points into Dueling allows us to pick up Blade Training, which gives us a bit more crit, and more importantly, cuts the cooldown on our sword abilities by 20%, which is pretty awesome both offensively and defensively. The 25 points in Inspiration are going to be where a lot of our survivability comes from. We've got Vengeful Images, Mender's Purity, and Persisting Images, which will help keep our Phantasms alive and doing damage. And Phantasmal Healing will help us with staying alive so that we can keep pumping damage out. And of course, Phantasmal Strength is another 15% damage bonus for our Illusionary Bros. We drop the last 5 points into Illusions, not because Illusionary Retribution is awesome, in fact it actually kinda sucks for this build. We're actually moving towards Illusionist Celerity, which is going to be the keystone of the build at level 80. Along the way, we'll grab Compounding Power at 65, which is going to be a flat 9% damage increase for us more often than not, and we'll pick up Phantasmal Haste at level 75, which is even more cooldown reduction. Once you grab Illusionist Celerity at 80, the majority of your cooldowns will be negligible, which is really the focus of the whole build. We want to be able to use as many of our abilities as possible whenever we need them. We don't ever want to have less than 3 Phantasms up after a fight has started, because most of our survivability comes from not getting hit. So the faster the mobs die, the more we can focus on just getting those events and Renown Hearts completed. On that note, let's talk about gear. So, just to be clear, my advice here is for people leveling in open world content or in dungeons. I'll briefly touch on World v World leveling towards the end here, but please, for the love of Glob, do not wear the gear I'm about to suggest into World v World. It will only ever end in tears. With that PSA taken care of, might I suggest the following. Full Berserker. All of it. Head to toe. On all extremities. If you've got a Prince Albert, even that should be zerked up, you dig? This is a DPS build. Your survivability comes from paying attention and making things die before they notice you. Do not gear for survival stats for PvE as a Mesmer. It is a waste. As far as runes, you've got a few options. Runes of the Scholar are great if you can afford them. Runes of Air are a decent choice too. And ruby orbs, of course, will get you by if you are budget conscious. For weapon sigils, you want a spare something with a superior sigil of Bloodlust to build stacks, and aside from that, an argument can be made for most of the more commonly used sigils. Sigil of Fire is great, especially on your Greatsword. Sigil of Purity can get you some extra condition removal if you'd prefer that for your on-crit sigil, and since you only want to run one on-crit sigil per weapon set since they share cooldowns, you'll probably want to pick up an on-swap sigil for your sword pistol set as well. Sigil of Battle is my personal preference, but Energy is also a decent choice if you find yourself having survivability issues. For food, we're going to go with Bowl of Sweet and Spicy Butternut Squash Soup, or Bowl of Curry Butternut Squash Soup, or their pre-80 equivalents if you're still leveling. I prefer the added power over precision, but it's really your call. Similarly, Sharpening Stones or Maintenance Oils are equally valid. Again, I prefer the power, but if you're more of a precision guy or girl, power to you. Wait, what? You know what I mean. Before we wrap things up here, if you're feeling particularly froggy and want to level in World v World, here's what I'd change in the build. Instead of starting with the 25 points in Inspiration at 60, put them in Illusions instead. The added damage will help more than a tiny bit of regeneration. As far as the gear, ditch the Zerker for Knights, and if you find conditions are a problem, feel free to work some Soldier's gear in there. I've seen exactly one Zerker Mesmer thrive in World v World. He was not running a Phantasm build, and he's substantially better at the game than the average player. Don't be a liability to your team. Pump up at least one survivability stat so you don't get blown up when you make a tiny mistake. It's World v World. Mistakes are going to happen. Besides, you'll level faster when you're alive anyway. That's all I've got for you folks. I'll be covering some non-leveling Mesmer builds as time goes on, so if you're looking for something fresh every now and then, make sure you're subscribed. If you enjoyed the video, let me know by hitting the like button, and feel free to drop a comment below if you have any questions or just want to chat. Much love to each and every one of you. Stay black.